Hello everyone, I am Dr. Beatrice Hippolyte and this is your world. Today is a special day because we have a special guest. Before I even say his name, I must tell everybody, those of you who are watching or listening, we have a priest with us today. That's the privilege. His name is Father Rigaud Lucon. A little bit of his background, like I already said prior, he's a priest, he's a licensed mental health counselor. He has a master in divinity and biblical studies. He also have a master of art in technology. And he has a postmaster in science of education. Now I think Father Rigaud, you're working on getting your
My
PhD.
PhD, yes.
In what?
In counseling.
In counseling. So welcome to the show.
And thank you, Dr. Beatrice. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm so happy to be with you. And hello, everyone. So nice to see you all. And thank you for having me on the show.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about grief. And we must say grief is a very, important topic. People experience grief in so different many ways. And grief doesn't have to deal with only loss of a family member or death, if we may put it that way. So we're going to go through everything with Father Rigaud. But before we even get into your presentation, I know you recently lost your father. How are you doing? How are you coping?
And thank you for asking. As you just mentioned, that grief is not an easy topic to talk about, especially when you are grieving the loss of a loved one, and it can trigger. I always say to my clients when they come, if you feel like you are not feeling okay talking about the topic, just have some tissues and you can process the grief by the way. So yes, it's not an easy process. There is no right or one way to grieve by the way. To each his own, but it's a process. And as you go through the process and you experience various symptoms, when it comes to grief, by the way. Yeah, I'm coping. It's one day in and out, so I'm trying to make the best of it.
But you look good, by the way. This
you.
I must say.
Thank you. Trying, it's like what they call the integration of the loss. We're trying to move forward to accept to live life without the loved one, and as we move forward, yeah.
So
Thank you.
it's like basically, so you're trying to hold on really tight on the memories.
Absolutely, because we have to keep going because it's painful not to have our loved ones with us. We come to acceptance. That's because we are happy, but you know what? We're trying to accept the world as it is right now. Without my father, for instance, we keep moving forward while we're cherishing the legacy that he left for us.
Okay, that's wonderful. And it's well put because, I may experience a loss of, like a father, a mother, but at the end of the day, the world will not stop. The world will keep moving and we have to keep on moving as well.
Absolutely.
So without losing any more time, so what you have for us, what is grief?
Before saying anything, so I want to have that disclaimer because what I'm going to talk about, and not everything here that are from my own research. By the way, I get it from so many great mental therapists out there, such as from either from institutions that I belong, such as Alma or Eco Health, Behavioral Health, or other platforms which I use, from webinars, which I get to give that credit to all these specialists out there. So grief is a very important topic, as I said before, and grief really happens after the loss. Love of something or loss of a loved one. That's why we have two types of losses, by the way, that lead to grief. The non-death losses are losing status, for instance, losing a job, or moving to a new neighborhood, right? Or moving away from your church, or even selling a house can also be like a non-death losses. And
what you will call like integration.
Correct. So now, the loss, that grief that comes from love, of course, we have three types in our griefs. We have the acute one. It happens right after you lose somebody who is dear to you. It can also be the loss of a pet, by the way. Some people, they go to grief when they lose a pet, right? So they grieve that the pet for them is a pet, but to them, it's a family member.
I
It's
know for
something that is really dear to
I
them.
know few people.
Yes, so they are grieving the loss of their pet. Now, the acute grief, it happens, it depends. Again, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. And grief and mourning, sometimes people tend to confuse them. But they are two different things, by the way. The grief is just like the what's happening inside, but it's the internal process of the loss itself, the grieving, feeling sad, for instance. And the mourning is the outward reaction of loss, for instance. It's like you are crying all the time, or you might be in isolation, removing yourself from the world, stop. This is the mourning process. Now, in the acute grief, what happens is that, you begin to experience the world without the loved one. Now you tend not to do what you used to do before. You want to withdraw yourself from the world because you say, am I going now to move? Is that too quickly to move forward? You would not want to move too fast to forget about the loved one, right? In the acute stage here. And then,
If I may ask you that question, Father Rigaud, while you mentioned that, when you may choose not to move too fast, is that a feeling of guilt, or it just because you don't want people to think that, oh, you just lost a family member or a loved one and now you're already moving on? So which one?
and sometimes that's called the complicated feelings. It's a double. Shame and guilt go together, or resentment or law or regrets, right? There are times you feel like, man, if I were there, I could have done something. It's like, oh, what if I just begin to live life as if nothing ever happened? What people might say, all these things can bring some other the grievers to hold back and not to move forward. And also, it could be the grief itself. The pain is so intense that can lead to depression. By the way, talking about grief, grief is not just simply about feeling sad. Sometimes it means nightmares. Yeah, I cannot sleep at night. It can also mean insomnia. You cannot sleep, or when you sleep, what you are doing is like it's nightmares. You cannot sleep. Or it can also lead to anger or anxiety or depressions, and bring fog or memory problems. And there are a variety of feelings attached to grief, right? Again, to each his own. And that grief depends also, put it that way, the intensity of grief depends on who died and who is grieving.
And what was your relationship
That's extremely
with
important.
that person?
Exactly. So how close you are with that person, by the way. If that, again, it also depends on the nature of death itself, right? So we know that we have at least 4 ways of dying, right? NASH. A natural death, it's when you are born and you die, you get sick, eventually you die. It's called natural death. It could be peaceful, could be traumatic as well. And the other one is accident, right? Yeah, someone dies in the accident. Now, it's no longer a natural death. It's a tragic. That brings about trauma. It depends. Let's say that you are driving with somebody, it's like you are in the car with that person, and it happened to be in the car accident. The person died, you were there, you are traumatized, and that remains in your memory forever. And also suicide. Some people, they end up taking their own lives, right?
Unfortunately,
it happened out of depression. For them, there is no way out except to take their own lives.
And while you mentioned suicide, it's like it's really heavy in our society nowadays, and especially among young people.
Yeah.
And research argue that the percentage is higher among like young people between the age of 14 to 26, and most likely those who tend to be either gay or lesbian or bisexual. And social media tend to play a major role into that as well. And I can understand, because it's like those people like either who are a member of the LGBTQ communities. So sometimes it's hard for them to get accepted by family members, by friends, or probably when they came out, they were rejected. So it's a lot, and it's a good point that you make, like because it's something that people have to keep their eyes open on their kids. Try to understand them when they tend to withdraw on themselves, when they tend to withdraw on the activities that they used to take pleasure in,
Correct.
and when they take to, like not to mingle with other people. Ask question, and as a community have other family members and friends involved into their lives, because sometimes as parent you may be so busy trying to hustle to bring the bread that you need to bring in the house, and don't even pay too much time into
Correct.
what's going on. But when you involve friends and family members into your kids' lives, then you have extra eyes looking out for you.
Absolutely. And clinical depression is very prevalent in our society nowadays, like you just mentioned. But when it comes to grief, it seems that depression is part of the stage itself, right? So, according to Rose, we have 5 stages of depressions, which therapists tend to move away from now. It's not only 5; it's more likely a clinical, you know, stages. But we tend to move not too close to that anymore. We believe that there is more to that, just 5 stages, right? Some say it's 7 stages, some others says it's 12 stages. But whatever the case may be, in the case of grief, depression seems to be part of it. It's the last step, the 4th stages before the acceptance, right? It's called reactional depression. Sometimes we feel like doing things that are really bizarre, but it's part of the process when it comes to grief as well. But it is not the same as clinical depression. Clinical depression, as you know, it requires treatment. Just as the physical illness needs attention, physical depression needs treatment. If not, if left unended, that might certainly lead to what we call suicidal ideations.
Exactly.
And the last one is the homicidal homicide. Of course, homicide, it happens sometimes. Unfortunately, from time to time, you hear somebody was murdered at home, right? Somebody just a husband murdered his own wife. It does happen, right? This is the 4th types of deaths that we do have, that it can lead to, of course, it will lead to grief. And again, like I said, the intensity of the grief depends on the relationship the griever has with the deceased one, and how old is the griever, because children have their own way to grieve that is quite different from adults.
Adults.
And also the intensity, the connection we had. I mean, who died? Is it a 90-year-old grandpa or 100-year-old grandmother? Or is it 50, 40 years old brother? It all depends, right? And that will intensify the grief process as well.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, like 5 stages of grief, and so like you add to it, so there may be like 6 or 7. So now it's more than 5. So we have like if my question is like, out of those 5 stages, which one of them you will consider to be the worst?
Well, this is a very good question. Also tricky, considering that to each his own. There is no, when it comes to grief, nobody is really confined into that stages. Some people might go to denial some people may never go to denial of innocence, right? Some might go to just feeling anger, right? Or some might go to right away to acceptance, the last stage. It all depends, right? So anger, bargaining, or denials, or acceptance or depressions, it all depends on the grievers themselves, right? Which one is the hardest? I don't know. I would say from my own experience, let's reflect back to my own situation. Probably in the second stage, you're feeling angry for so many reasons. Feel like you wish
Sometimes
that
reason you cannot even explain.
you cannot, because you feel like, man, I wish that my father was still there, my mom was still there with me. Sometimes when people say to you, "Why God has given, God has taken, let his name be blessed," yeah, I agree with that. But I would love my dad and my mom to be there with me as well. So this is why faith comes in, by the way. We'll talk about it when it comes to ritual afterward. But I don't know. I don't know which one is the lesser or harder, but it all depends on the giver, and most importantly, the relationship that you have with the deceased.
With the deceased person.
Yeah.
So it's fair enough. And I lost both of my parents. I never had a good relationship with my father. So I will not say that I didn't care,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel the loss.
Yeah.
So it was just
Intensity.
like, so hey, he died. So, and whatever that I could have done to assist him when he was sick, I took care of him, and I buried him, but I didn't feel that I lost
Correct.
a father because we never had that relationship. But my mother, whom I lost when I was 12 years old, because I was privileged to have her for a whole almost 7 to 8 years in my life. It's because my relationship with my mother, it's a whole different story. You probably will have to read the book.
Of course. Of course, I
And
did.
so, and if the connection that we had, even as a little child, so until today I still remember, like every night she will take me to the shower, help me take a good shower, put my nightgown on, help me brush my teeth. And when I'm sick, so that she will lay me down on her stomach until I feel good to put me in that bed. I still have that. And so it's like, and my father, I was raised in my father's house, but I never had a relationship with that man. When he died, it was like I didn't feel any loss, but I'm still grieving my mother's loss.
Correct.
And we only lived together for less than 8 years. So I understand when you say it depends of the relationship that you had with that person.
And even with that also, the DSM defines what they call the prolonged grief, right? Complicated grief that from 6 to 12 months. 12 months is for the adults, and children 6 months. But there are some psychologists said, no, it's not only a time frame of 12 months. It could be a wilderness. Some people, it's like the loss, is longer than, it's infinite, by the way. That is so true. And again, what happens sometimes, one loss can opens up the loss of the previous loss by sentence, right? Like I lost my mother 5 years ago now. When my dad passed away, he opened up the wounds, the unhealed wounds of my mother, which made my grieving process so heavy. It's 5 years ago. It's like it's happened yesterday. It brought me right back,
to square one.
That's how sometimes we can move from acute grief, loss or grief, to complicated grief. We can go back and forth, and sometimes it happens during holidays when you have big events, or you might move from acute to integrative loss, where you are able to accept the loss for the new reality, to adjust to the new world without the deceased person. But there are times it will come that probably when you come to the person anniversary, or there's a wedding happening in the family, right? Where that person will play key role, but not here. That will bring you right back to the acute stress as if it happened yesterday. Yeah, it's sometimes we go back from acute to integrated loss, grief, and also to complicated grief at the same time.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. So it's like, and some people, I know somebody, recently told me that, she was still grieving even 20 years after the loss of her sister, because her sister was more than a sister to her. Her sister was everything.
Yeah.
So until today, after 20 years, she still could not go over it.
Correct.
So,
and that's why sometimes after the loss of some relative ones or some loved ones, you feel nothing. No, not. It's like you feel numb. It's like the world ends right there.
So let me ask you this, Father. Is that really so? It's like, I understand that, sometimes, based on how you feel or the stage or the level to which that you may attain, within your grieving process, that you must seek for professional help. But it's like, let's say, in terms of family-wise or friendship-wise, so it's like how we really can assist somebody who's grieving.
Yeah, I mean, to each his own. It is said, some theories said that whenever you have a loss happening in your life, you must seek for therapy. Some say you don't have to. It all depends. As long as the grief doesn't, interfere with your daily functioning. What I mean by that is, it doesn't affect your relationship, your occupation, and your education, and your social life. If you are able to move on without that, there's no need to go for therapy. But with the time, that the intensity will decrease and you will go back to normalcy, right?
But has family members, has friends, so it's like, how can somebody can step in to kind of assist or offer some support that you may need?
That's what I was going to say as well. They have what they call the group support for grief, right? Just I will have the AA for those who are struggling with substance use and alcohol and drug use. We have a support group also for grievers. So they gather together maybe once a week or once a month. They gather together and they talk about the loved ones. And the more they talk about the death of the loved one, the deceased one, and the lesser the feelings are going down. Therefore, social support is extremely important.
So the importance of the group grievance, is to show you that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
In the process, down the road. So there are other people, and so you can lean on each other's shoulders
Absolutely.
to go through that heavy process.
Absolutely. And also, in time of grief, when family members get together, they get the strength, right, to carry out with the loss, and also the void is still there. The yearning for the loved one is still there. But as they stick together, they might find the strength that they need to integrate the loss into their day-to-day realities.
But will you say it's also essential for somebody, like a family member or a friend who know about somebody who lost someone, to check on that person on a regular?
Extremely important. Because without that, you might get stuck into the acute grief, where you don't want to do anything except you want to cling to the deceased person, right? You don't want to go. You don't want to do anything. You will do yourself from everything. No work, no self-care, right? You don't eat, you don't drink. Some people, they might use unhealthy coping mechanism.
So that's when you started losing your own self.
Yeah, such as they are smoking, they are drinking all the time, which they are trying to cope with that pain they have, but that might lead to further damage to
your own self.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father. Very good information. What is the most painful stage? So it's like some people will say depression is the most painful stage. Will you agree with that?
Again, there is no prescription when it comes to grief.
There is no one size fit all.
No, I mean, there's no one size fits all, no no cut clear, you know, to manage to measure that. Again, for some people, it's denial. Because why denial is important? They put in that it never happened. It never happened. It's the mechanism that protects them from the intensive pain that they are going through. They block it. That's not true. Mom is there. I mean, she is somewhere else.
Somewhere.
That cannot be true, right? And after they move from that denial, they become to get angry. That is so true, though, right? Yearning for the lost one everywhere now. Get angry at God, at themselves, or whomever, wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. The doctors, whatever the case may be, And they might say, well, not only angry now, the bargaining say, well, I'll do everything. God, I'll do everything if you can bring my mother back, my father back, my loved one back. It will never happen, by the way. Because it never happened now, you fall into what they call the depressive stage. Depression now, because there is no return to you, then you begin to feel so depressed. This is where, during that time, you become very vulnerable. This is where you need the social assistance, the social support to help you out, because now you might make very, bad decisions, by the way. When you are emotionally down, you don't make good decisions, right?
Yeah,
That's where
definitely, especially when you're angry, when you let your anger get to to a point where you don't have any more control. So now you may be able to do anything or take any action that you were not supposed to.
Correct.
I've seen people, who shoot people.
Yeah.
People who throw a deadly item at people.
Yeah.
And people who even lost a good job,
correct,
over them being angry at something they could not really
correct,
get control over.
correct.
So a lot of things can happen as a result of somebody being excessively angry.
Correct. So one of my clients was saying to me that she was there when her father passed away, but she went to get something for him. But when he came back, he already died. But she wished that she could be there to hold his hand. That leads to, blame and guilt. She wasn't there for him for that last farewell. And now she became so angry, And now that led her to the reactional depressions. Now she said to me, whenever she sees two cars parked next to side and
that trigger.
No, what she wanna do? She wanna just, it's crazy. She's gonna just walk, put her two legs by the side of the cars. It sounds like crazy, right? That's reactional depression. It's so intense, and she is a reckless behavior. That's what she wanna do. Or doing other stuff, drinking, smoking, and do things that to feel, she feels so numb. She just wants to do things to make her feel that, she's still alive.
I remember, when my mother died, so I was 12, back home, being born and raised in Haiti. So it's like if you lost a mother, you have to wear black for 2 years. If your father, black for 1 year, uncle and aunt,
6 months.
So 6 months. So I think, for the mother, after a year, they allow you to mix some light colors. Which I never liked, by the way, because one of the things is that I would not say that, I was, so it's like I was not thinking about my mother or I was trying to forget my mother, but I wanted to move on because I came to conclusion that I'll never see her again. But each time, because I was forced to wear black colors, so now each time somebody sees you, oh, who passed?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, my mother.
It's a ritual.
And they will pity you.
Yeah.
Oh, poor little you. So it's like, it's like sometimes, little thing somebody may say or do can get you back into that moment.
Yeah. It's a ritual, by the way. It's a ritual. Sometimes it does help. it's a cultural factor, and sometimes if your mother, your father, or a loved one pass away, you're wearing a yellow, that means you are betrayer, right? So it has some significance to it, and again, to each his own. Yeah, I mean, it does help some people also to mourn, the loss of the loved ones. Remember that I'm still grieving, I'm processing the loss of my loved ones. It reminds me that I'm not in the festive mood, right? So the colors that will highlight a festivity is no longer worn by you because you are still mourning. It has some ups and downs, attached to it.
My next question, so it's like, is there really, a way, or what is the most difficult death to recover from?
That's a very good question, by the way. And again, like I said, if I go back again to the four types of deaths we spoke about, the natural one, you die peacefully, and death through accidents, with tragic death, right? Suicide or homicide. It all depends. Again, the connection with the deceased person, and also how old is the person who died, how old are you, right? The giver, and it's a mixture of everything. Which one? It all depends on the connection that you have. For instance, we might say, the husband might say, oh, the loss, the death of my husband is the highest to bear because I will have to learn to be a widow in the world without him, right? Some might say, no, my child is the hardest one because let's say that he is my only child that I have. That means as his death, there is no meaning in life for me.
And no parent should bear with a child, like
That
we
is,
always say.
yeah, it is tough. And I think the death of a child is always hard for any parent to bear, right? It's tough.
But you know what? It's a good thing that you mention it. So you say, even myself, I don't have any children, right? But each time that I've heard about the passing of a child, it's hit me hard.
Yeah.
So it's like, if somebody who's 75, 80, 90, 100 pass, so I understand for the loved ones, the direct loved ones, so they're gonna feel it. So it's like, oh, you know what, my mother passed, my mother was 90 or 70,
Yeah,
or 90, so, or 100, so, and I'm like, I'm most likely, so I'll use some wisdom not to say, oh, he or she was old enough.
yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, it is
but
expected.
but at the same talking, we know that the word that we are leading to,
Yeah.
because death is also part of life.
We are born to
Right?
die, right?
So we were born to die. So, but when you have like a child who, like, like a baby, a child, a teenager, a young adult, pass away, it's really, it hits me heavy. Always hit me heavy. Compared if it was somebody who died, at the age of 80 plus.
And this is so true. If we want to do some spirituality to that, we say even Jesus Christ empathizes with the loss of a child when it comes to the son of the widow, the name in the vision of name, right? The widow, she was crying as they are going to bury the only child that she had, and this was so painful it was for that woman, right? And he stabbed the casket bearers, and he tapped the coffin and said, man, I tell you to rise. And he raised him from the dead and gave it back to his mother. Why? Because it's so painful. It's as a mother and not having a husband. The only thing that she had then was the son. And dying at a young age, she just like get lost, right? Again, I would say that the loss of A child, of course, is always hard
Yeah, so
to,
no, it's hard, it's painful. I will not wish that even upon my worst
of course,
enemy.
enemies, of course not. Of course not. It's
You
tough.
know, it's really tough, you know. So it's like some people, you know, sometimes may recover, but you find people who will never be able to recover from the loss of a
That's
child.
how it happens sometimes. That can lead to suicide. Because after all, you see that you are a widow. You have no husband, right? So the only thing that you have is your child, your only child who happened to die. So what does the world looks like to you?
Now you're living in a world with no purpose.
It's like that's it. The point is now it's time for me to go. That lead to depressions, isolations, and before you know it, slowly they are dying until they find their way to meet again with the lost one.
So, and people like that, you know, what will be your advice, you know, to assist those people as friends, family members?
Well, death is always painful. And whatever feelings that they are going through is quite normal. It's natural. But they're not alone, you know. And they're not alone because they are professionals out there who are willing to assist them. And through therapy, of course, there are various types of grief model therapies to assist the grievers who are mourning the loss of their loved ones, right? Sometimes we just be there with them. We accompany them, you know, we work alongside with them without telling them what to do, but just be there with them, to show the support, right? Sometimes we have to teach them the coping skills, right, through CBD, because we believe that sometimes there's triangle, you know, connection between the thoughts, emotions, and feelings, right? So we educate them about the loss, of course. We provide them tips so that they can manage their emotions, and first and foremost is the mind control the feelings and the emotions, right? So when you change your perceptions of the loss itself, you can work around it. It's painful, but you can integrate that into the new world without the deceased person.
I'm gonna ask you that probably my last question, Father. As a priest, I know you do countless, you
Of
know,
course.
funerals. You mentor, you advise, you counsel so many family members who have gone through that process. So not only, you know, so I know that you're capable of doing it because you are well equipped. Not only you are a priest, but you are also a licensed mental health professional. How you normally, you know, what the method that you normally use to stay mentally healthy while helping other people grow through that process?
Well, the key is self-care. Self-care is extremely important. My principle is very simple. In order to help number two, number one must be taking care of himself, right? It's very important because you cannot give what you don't have. And self-care is extremely important. It's the way that you balance out work, you know, and life, personal life, and also to be healthy, to assist others. If not, you won't be able to do what needs to be done. Self-care to you first and foremost. And also as a therapist, I train myself that way. I am not an expert to everyone's problem. I have some
That's it.
limitations, but there are times I say, I don't know, I wish I could have an answer for you now, but there are times I say, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you as of now. I might look for an answer for you, but now I don't have it. Because
And whenever that you had to refer somebody, you know, to somebody else, so
absolutely.
you deliberately
And
do
that's
it.
why we all have our own specialties. Why I am trained mostly in CBD, but focusing more on anxiety and depressions and some related disorders, because we cannot do everything and all the mental health issues. There are so many. That's why we refer some clients to some specialists so that they can be better treated, by other therapists.
Okay, so that's well said. Thank you so much. Like, we just heard from Father Rigaud. Listen. So grief is a heavy process and everybody go through it, differently. And as family members and friends, we have to be there, be present, for the people around you who are dealing with some type of grief or loss. Regardless whether the person lost a father, a mother, a child, a aunt, a grandfather, a parent, or a pet. So it's like some people tend to take that very lightly. And I think, culturally, so that can have a very big aspect too.
Yes.
So for the people, for those who tend to take lightly, those who tend to lose their pets.
Correct.
So it's like, I'm gonna take myself as an example. I remember, many years ago, probably 15 years ago, so I encountered a lady who was crying over the loss of her dog. So, and growing up back home, I'm like, a dog, it's like dogs are not being treated the same way as over here. And everybody was like telling her, how sorry, they were for her loss. And me, at that time, who did not understand it that way, I kept on walking. I'm like, oh, I thought she lost a family member.
Of course.
Until somebody said, oh, no. So I was really, at that moment, being educated on how dogs are being treated or being considered in this culture. So, and we have to respect that.
Absolutely.
So even, coming from a culture, where dogs are not being treated the same. So, but you have to understand in this culture, dogs or pets are considered as part of the family.
Correct.
And you have to respect and show support for those who may lose whichever one, a cat, a pet, a dog, or even those who have a fish tank.
Of course.
When they lost one of those fishes, they'll cry over it.
And
so it's very important, to show support. Because it's like, sometimes you don't know what the person may be going through. If you know somebody lost someone, check on that person on a regular. Hey, Father, how are you? I know you lost your father recently. How are you doing? So I called you more than once this week and I haven't heard from you. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. Stop by to check on the person. Sometimes the person may not answer, but decide to stay in bed for a week.
Correct.
So go there and pull that person out of that bed. Take that person to sit outside, or take that person to go for some ice cream, or what have you, or take a walk in the park. So, but do something.
Correct, and I completely agree. And what I will also say, just a recap, there is no right or wrong way to grieve right away. And there is no one size fits all when it comes to grief. And it may look like it looks and feels different for each and every one of you, right? But the point is, grief is always grief. It's always painful. But there is hope. And the hope resides within us, right? It's in us. And holding in mind that our brains are shaped directly by the experiences that they are exposed to. So the more we can build in those protective factors and nurturing experiences, the higher the possibility of healing. Again, grief isn't just about sadness, by the way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it means insomnia, or nightmares, brain fog, or feeling angry, resentful, right? And also intrusive memories or flashbacks. Also feeling everything or nothing. Also denial, it cannot happen. A loss of appetite or binge eating sometimes, right? And all these things, anxiety, panic attacks, and depressions and hopelessness, these are also symptoms of grief. If that's why sometimes the the need to seek for therapy
It's vital.
is vital. When you hit those symptoms like anxiety, panic attacks, depressions, or loss of meaning, that means you need to get some professional help. And the good thing, you're not alone.
Oh, yeah.
We are there to assist you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know before we wrap up, you want to leave us with some resources that we can go through?
Absolutely. We have a bunch of resources here that I'm going to leave with you so that you can share with the audience.
Okay. Okay. And the first type of resources that we have like, 2 books that we want to recommend. They're very good. So the first one is the options B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience and Fighting Joy by Shirley Stenberg and Adams Grant. And the second one is a Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. And we also have like anybody, for those of you who are good with online, Google or Google Scholar or any type of search engine that you probably want to use, the American Psychological Association, it's also good for grief and loss. There is a very good article that I read recently, and it's called Grieving: A Natural Response to Loss by Help Guide. And the last one that we want to leave you with, it's a hotline. It's Grief Support Hotline. The number to call is 1-800-445-4808. Once more, 1-800-445-4808. It was a pleasure to be with you today. Once again, I am Dr. Hippolyte, and it was your world.